My first question here I want to talk about is, what does a divided city look like? Cities have always been divided, right? Cities have always had high-income areas, low-income areas. So what's so new about talking about divided cities? So I'll show you 1970 here. The red and the dark red areas on the map are low and very low-income areas. The blue areas are high and very high-income areas. And the yellow areas on the map are middle-income areas. And Toronto was a middle-income city. Now I'm going to flip 35 years. It takes your breath away, because look at this map now. Look at all the yellow. Yellow is middle income. And what happens to all the yellow on the map of Toronto in 2005? It largely disappears. We are no longer a middle-income society. So my next question is, what are the forces dividing the city? Why does Toronto look that way? What has caused Toronto to look that way? And this is what has happened to Toronto. The middle income group that I've been talking about, who has an income 20% above or below the average for each of those years, the number of census tracts, neighborhoods has been decreasing, and it took a dramatic fall in the 1990s. Now, a bunch of things happened in the 1990s. We began having conservative governments introduce cutbacks in social programs. The federal government did the same thing in the 1990s. The social housing program was discontinued. In Ontario, social assistance rates were cut by 20% in 1995, October 1995. Unemployment insurance became employment insurance, and less people qualified for it, and you got less money for it. The federal government used to pay 50% of the education bill, 50% of the health bill, 50% of the social assistance bill. In the 1990s, they began not doing that, so both the federal government and the provincial government began passing on charges and fees.
The critical issue still for the inner suburban folks is just access to transit. So they're Kipling and Albion, you're waiting 30 minutes for the Rexdale bus to take you down to the subway, morning, noon, and night. A lot of these folks are traveling across the city to jobs that might be in Scarborough, or people are spending an enormous amount of time in transit when they live in some of these inner suburbs. And some of the studies of people being time-starved are if they have to take their kids to a childcare, drop them off first thing in the morning, then get back on the TTC to get to a job, and then at the end of the day, do that over again. There are many, many, many low-income people who are spending 4 hours on transit a day.
And let's not forget that each fare is $2.50 or $3 cash, right? That adds up. So $5, $6 for a round trip or multiple trips. Minimum wage, roughly $10, right? The next issue I want to address is what can be done. This scenario doesn't have to play out of being a continually dividing city with those very strong divisions. But we realize something, that if the bigger macro context doesn't change, whatever we can do in the city, whatever the city can afford to do with the best of intentions and all that, is not going to make much difference. Because there are these four problems. Income support, effective anti-discrimination measures, affordable housing strategy, long waiting lists and very little of it being built, and a labor market strategy. In the 1970s, nobody talked about good jobs, bad jobs. You had a job. Bought a suburban house and a car and raised a family of 8 in the 50s and 60s into the early 70s, and that began to change.
If we can preserve and increase the amount of affordable housing, then we are going to have a way to try to have mixed income neighborhoods across the city. In the inner suburbs, it's a slightly different twist, and there it's to increase services, in particular transit.
Knowledge is knowledge and power is power. Okay? So knowledge and research are necessary. To know these things is very important. Knowing them, talking about them, isn't going to change anything.
Everybody wants to know what we as an individual can do. I think using social media is one answer, and I also think the trick of this is to harness that energy that people are expressing individually and collectively into some fruitful action. It's very convenient to look at place-based analysis because our political system is place-based. So showing census tracts which fall into ridings and wards helps mobilize a little bit of energy around the political decisions people are making as they move forward. So that's the benefit of having place-based analysis. It very directly connects to our government system.
Power is being exercised in all kinds of ways. We have to try to find ways to ourselves exercise what power we have, what influence we have.